My name's Paddy Young. I'm from Enlit Europe, and I'm joined here with Sietske, who's she runs the Initiate program globally, and also Gijs de Bruin, who's co-founder of 98 Sparks, a serial entrepreneur, impact investor, but also a startup mentor. We're here to ask Gijs a few questions and some advice that he can give startups in this tough period. Gijs, probably the best way to start is if you could introduce yourself quickly.
Yeah, thank you, Paddy, and thanks for this opportunity, and Sietske as well. Yes, short introduction. I started my business in 1998 together with my business partner Nick Pennicate, and in China, in Shanghai. And from there, we set out to develop a variety of businesses. I mean, in that period of time in 1998, I mean, there were so many opportunities, but also a lot of risks related to specifically to China, Asia crisis. We did not really know what was going to happen with the RMB. We did not really know where it was going to go politically in China. So from that perspective onwards, we started to develop into various directions, which means over the years we built a portfolio of 5 companies, 3 of which have been developed in China and 2 in the Netherlands. And in the meantime, we also have developed various other projects. And we stumbled many times, like many entrepreneurs, and as everybody else is always saying, that's where you learn the most, and that's very true. So, amongst others, we've built the largest flower growing and distribution company of China, together with a joint venture partner in the Netherlands. We've built an exhibition company and trade show company organizing many environmental shows related to environmental technology. We built a production platform, an engineering platform for medical devices, lighting fixtures. We have a food ingredient company in the Netherlands, production and processing of soya protein. And we have Pure Terra, which is an investment fund focused on investing in early growth startups in the water industry. And which is based at this point our biggest child and baby, where we invest most of our time. It's also because that's where our passion is. We've done many investments in startups along over the years, and we still invested in those startups. These are mostly also in disruptive technologies, like new chip technology. We are involved in artificial intelligence startups, and etc. And besides, as you just already mentioned, I am a coach to accelerators, an accelerator group here in the Netherlands, which is part of the Entrepreneurs Organization, which is a worldwide organization of about 12,000 members. So that's in short what I'm doing.
So you've been quite busy over the last few years.
Yes, it's a bit of a hobby, it seems.
Yeah, from what I know, you are normally based mainly from working from China. You have a similar accent to mine, so a Dutch accent.
Sure.
And so I'm guessing, I'm wondering as well, like how has the current situation, the COVID-19, how is that impacting your daily work at the moment and the businesses that you're running?
So for the daily impact, it means that I cannot travel back to China. I mean, I lived in China for 17 years and moved back with my family to the Netherlands some time ago, which meant that I had to travel up and down also to see my colleagues in China, and to talk to my general managers there, and on a strategic level, and talk to business partners as well. That changed since January this year, when I last visited Shanghai. So at this moment, I'm housebound, like many of us, unfortunately, and I'm stuck to virtual calls which is, I mean, it's a means to an end, but it's not my preferred method. As to the businesses, yeah, it's a variety. Some of the businesses are impacted, pretty heavily, whilst others are, making the best of the situation. For instance, our exhibition business is hit very hard. We still have to be seen if any of the trade shows or conferences will take place, and we're looking at this also as an opportunity. So we see what we can do to cater to the needs of our clients, and in terms of offering like virtual platforms and virtual solutions through which they can still display and promote their companies and products and reach out to clients virtually. So and that's across the board, also with our other companies, we try to pivot and just rather see this as an opportunity than sit on our hands.
Yeah, and you speak to quite a few startups on a regular basis. I'd imagine that contact, has increased somewhat. What's the biggest challenge? What are they asking your advice about the most?
The biggest challenge across the board is, of course, cash. But in the Netherlands, most advice is about the regulations, or the government regulations in place. To what extent, in the Netherlands, it's called the Now regulation, in which the government is supporting startups. If there's a drop of revenue, the government still continues to pay the salaries of the employees, and I think in many countries it's the same or similar regulations. But there's many questions around this because there's also many exceptions. How to calculate your revenues, which percentage of the staff salaries will be paid, what do I have to take into account, am I eligible for this kind of regulation or not? There's many situations and exceptions as well.
And have you as well heard from them? Like, do they see the opportunities being presented as well at the same time, especially when it comes to you already touched upon artificial intelligence, the whole digitalization, events as well, moving online. I think it has quite accelerated a couple of areas as well, even though it has only been a couple of weeks that most of the world has been in some kind or some form of a lockdown.
Correct. Yeah. The first reaction in general has been shock. And then the second reaction, what to do now? But then very quickly after that came the realization, okay, let's make the best out of this situation and see what we not only can salvage, but what we can do with our business to actually see this as an opportunity. And I think with what most, if not all, startups have in common, they're very agile. Which means they're very adaptive to new environments, and especially when they're young people, and they can be very creative, and they turn indeed to very good online solutions or virtual solutions, but also in terms of how can I pivot in the product offering I have. So these are all things we see.
So it's quite interesting actually, because you mentioned how agile startups are, and in many instances it's a sort of a small organization, as you mentioned, it's agile, but also the creative aspect. It's quite interesting to see whether they can actually impact on sort of normal business, that sort of mindset. Is there lessons to be learned from startups for bigger business? Absolutely. There is a certain complacency which happens, not in all the bigger or more established businesses, but you see that happening. And through this, there's more. I don't know if the right word is defiant in that respect, or that they're stuck in their thinking and in their patterns. So they really look for the government to help them out, rather than also look internally and at themselves. So what can we do ourselves
without all the help from outside, to actually use this situation and this challenge as an opportunity. So I think that's specifically what companies can learn. Also to look inside inside of in the teams. You know, are my teams really agile, or are we too bureaucratic? Do we have too many procedures and things which prevent us from making quick moves? And luckily we hear on the news as well about companies who quickly shift, larger companies who quickly shift from their daily business into producing something new. Yesterday I heard about, I forgot the name of the company, but it's a company who makes a lot of a Wavin, I believe it was, makes a lot of pipes and tubes and all these kind of things. Very big company, but they quickly moved and started to make plastic protection masks or screens or facial screens, which staff in hospitals can use, and now they produce them by the tens of thousands. And I think these are the solutions, which you usually see, or the change you usually see with smaller companies, but in this case it was also a larger company who quickly shifted.
Yeah, very admirable.
And what's the smartest pivot that you have you've recently seen from any of the startups you're working with?
That's a good question. I wouldn't really. I think it's hard to point out one which is really smart. I mean, there's all incremental changes. I don't see huge changes like 180 shifts, but companies can use it cleverly. I might think of some later on, but it doesn't come to mind at this point. What is the most clever one?
Yeah, and are startups worried about, because there's obviously the need for cash, the need for new rounds of investments, but what is the timeline like? Are they worried in the next month, or would it be that they have a little bit of a longer runway?
Well, there's differences also we see with the investments we've made and the startup we've made. For instance, we have invested in America and also in startups in France, and what we see that there's a lot of packages available for specifically startups to prolong their runway. So this gives us as investors also a good feeling that there is support, a very quick support, and it gives us also the feeling that these companies will actually make it through these hardship times. Another thing they can do, if they're well placed, and it's hard to go out in the market now to raise money specifically for VCs or for VC depending companies like early stage and seed round companies. They can look back at their existing investors and just raise a round through them. Because then it becomes a question like, okay, do you want us to fail or falter, or do you still want us to continue? And considering, that of course depends on how well positioned such a company is. But I think in many cases, the investors will still choose to up their investment.
Yeah.
But for now, at least in many countries, we can see that there is support through subsidies, through forgivable loans, through support of staff salaries, which can help them to at least go through the next few months.
We were with a call with someone, and he kept talking about vulture capital.
Vulture capital, yeah.
Yeah. Is it that negative? Is it if people are helping, or is that just a cynic's way of explaining sort of more of a white knight investment?
let me clarify. Is the vulture capital then being seen as a sign of this time, or VC as in general as vulture capital?
It's at this time. People waiting on a creaking startup with a great idea that is trouble
Sure.
finding capital.
Sure, there is these vulture capital money around there. Honestly, I think what happens now is also good, because it means there's a shakeout. It means the better startups will survive. There will be ideas which fall to the street and which can easily be picked up. I also feel that some of especially the valuations of a lot of startups pre-2020 were inflated too much. So it brings down a lot of the valuations to more normal levels. And I think in the end, this will help the startups also to more easily attract capital. What we see is also worldwide, there's a lot of capital being injected in the system. This money has to go somewhere, and it's definitely not going to be sitting idle on bank accounts, because you don't get any returns on that. So I feel within a couple of months, when the stabilization and we're slowly looking up and the economies are recovering from this recession, that the money will flow back to the startups, startups community.
So you're saying that all the fluffiness will fall away,
yes.
And the true gems will remain.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
At a good price.
Yeah.
At a good price, yeah.
But are you still, as an investor at this moment, are you still accepting pitches? Like, are you still actively looking for new companies to invest in, or?
Absolutely. For what we see now, that for us, this is the right time. This is the right time to move forward, to also keep raising money for ourselves and to keep investing. So yes, we accept pitches. We keep on filling our pipeline. We keep talking. We keep sending out term sheets. Yeah.
Well, as you know, the field that we're both working in, the sector, is the energy sector,
yes.
Which is considered to be one of the vital sectors. Obviously, because otherwise we wouldn't be sitting here with the lights on, being able to work remotely, hospitals not able to work. But I'm wondering as well, do you maybe see as well, because there's a huge need for investment in the energy sector? On the project level, but as well on the startup level, the new technologies, small companies trying to make their way. Do you see maybe as well a shift in investors shifting their focus and coming into the energy sector, maybe revaluing the sector as being a profitable one?
I think it was already a profitable sector. There were, as far as I'm familiar with it, I know in the Netherlands there's quite a few funds, VC and PE, which focus on energy transition. Mm-hmm. We've spoken to several of those funds, and they've been very successful with raising money for over the past years. I know of one of the VC funds which is very comparable to us. Also in this stage they invest, is very early growth. They just raised a fund of 100 million and are ready to invest and ready to deploy. So I think it's the same, and maybe for energy, also considering what's now happening in the oil field and what we see around us, it just makes all the more sense to shift from oil-based products and use to different sources of energy. Yeah, so yes, absolutely. I think it's a very good time to invest in energy-related startups. Yeah.
Yeah, so this might then as well be for the energy sector the biggest opportunity coming from.
I think so.
From this
absolutely.
challenge.
Yeah, and I think on a sort of larger level, the investment that will be coming in via the European Green Deal and other areas, I really believe, because of the price of renewables being so much lower than in 2008, 2009, that the restart for the economy will be a sort of green energy based kickstart, which I think is very encouraging.
Yeah, further, I mean, we are very closely connected, as you know, from your experience, Paddy. So everything related to water is very closely related to energy as well. So there's a very strong connection there. So, and everything we try to achieve with startups in the water field, on the back end always has a CO2, or almost always have a CO2 reduction component in it, and energy reduction component in it. Because energy of water purification and wastewater treatment in general, or desalination for that matter, uses enormous amount of energy. So every breakthrough or disruption in that field has on the backside always a big impact on the energy consumption.
Yeah, and I think you're looking at sort of energy neutral with the biogas
generation.
Which is something you see a lot of water companies who have, in fact, an example of a company that's involved in Poland with the agriculture sector, actually from biogas generating electricity for the whole farm and local area. So the combination with water energy is very strong, and will just get stronger.
Yeah.
I think it's sort of time for the sort of $1 million question, Gijs. What advice would you give? General advice would you give startups at this moment in time?
Yeah, that's always the $1 million question.
Be strong.
Yeah, well, be strong. Just look, be positive, I would say. And again, don't sit on your hands. There's more opportunities out there than you sometimes in your darkest moments would think of. There's a lot of problems you're dealing with as a startup, be it cash flow problems, considerations. Do I have to lay off people or not? How do I make a payroll in the next month? But then again, you're not alone. You're part in a chain, and the chain in general does not want it to break. So you can always also go to your customers who depend on you. You can go to your vendors, for who you're also important. You can go to your investors and see if you can make smart deals. And the smart deals sometimes also mean that you have to give in on certain areas. But hey, if that in the end also helps you to survive and get through better, then so be it. So I think, the overall, look at it as an opportunity.
Great. Well, Gijs, thank you very much for joining us. It was very interesting, and I'm sure lots of useful gems there for the people involved with Initiate.
Thank you both. It was a pleasure chatting to you.